Listen up! Hold on to your seats. Grab your girls, grab your beers.
What's going on? It's Tommy Beck, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host. Incarceration, America's rock, metal, and tattoo festival with Slipknot. Falling in Reverse, Five Finger Death Punch. Plus Marilyn Manson, 3 Days Grace, Beartooth, Knocked Loose, Lamb of God, Parkway Drive, I Prevail, In This Moment, and so many more. Report to the Ohio State Reformatory on July 18th through 20th, 2025 to face your sentencing. 3 days of rock, tattoos, and the return of the Haunted Blood Prison. Passes for Incarceration are on sale now at incarceration.com. Zombified.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And I'm really excited for today's episode, man. We're hitting a milestone, episode 350. And I couldn't think of a better guest to have on today. This man's a music industry legend. And he's also somebody that I'm very grateful to call a good personal friend. And helping me on my journey to be a better man every day. Let me introduce Mr. Marko Babineau. How you doing, Marko?
I'm great, Bill. Good to see you, man. Great to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, I'm honored to have you on here, Marko. We've been getting close the past year, and I was just like, man, we got to get some of your story out there. I know there's other places you've been out there on and stuff, but one thing that you've shared with me that I really wanted to touch on that I don't think you've shared much publicly is your time in the military. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about that. But usually when I have somebody on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. So do you remember as a kid what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, boy. What did I want to be? It wasn't the president. That I do know. No, I just wanted to be successful. And I always had a real fondness towards music. So I knew music was going to be a part of my life. I mean, my first job was working downtown Boston in Filene's department store. And I worked in the candy department. And I used to just sit in the vestibule eating bonbons half the day and doing a little bit of work. But every week I would take my check and go across the street to Jordan Marsh, which was also another big store, and I'd go to the record department and I would literally hand my week check over to the cashier and not start going through bins, and anything that had a wild cover I would buy. I didn't know who was who, and when I was buying those back then it was like Cream, The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Strawberry Alarm Clock, Blues Magoos. I mean, all of those kind of Brit Invasion and psychedelic bands, because back then they had wild covers, and I thought, wow, this must be cool. And I kind of like baptism under fire. I just learned that music by experimentation. When I saw the Jimi Hendrix Experience with that fisheye lens with all their psychedelic clothing, I thought, wow, these guys are far out. It's got to be interesting. And yeah, so that was the beginning of it all.
Yeah, so there was you just kind of were attracted to music yourself, or were there any influences at the house too growing up?
Excuse me. I had an older brother who was also in the military. And he had a guitar. He used to mess around with it. I didn't know how serious he was, if he was ever going to do anything with it. But he also was a big record collector. And when he went to Vietnam, I just took over his whole record collection. So all of a sudden, my record collection doubled.
Nice, nice. And then, so you got into music, and I know you started playing as well. When did you start, playing music yourself?
Well, this is weird because, as a kid, a teenager, I had kind of a knockoff drum set. And I used to get together with my best friend who played bass and this other kid who played guitar. And we would drive up to like New Hampshire or Vermont and get a cabin for the weekend and eat psychedelics and just kind of jam and mess around. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no skills really. But in the last 12, 13 years, I did officially take up drums, and I've been playing for the last 13 years, and I've actually got pretty good. I'm in actually 3 working bands right now.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I definitely want to get into that with you. But as you mentioned, because I'm trying to, figure out your timeline, you mentioned your brother was in the military, and I mean, you had, at the time, did you have any intentions of joining yourself, or what led you into getting in the military?
No, I didn't. And, my father was really down on my brother because he got drafted and, he was in the Army and went to NAM and served 2 terms while he was there. And he never came back the same. It really kind of messed his head up. But my father kept telling me, you got to get into college, you got to get into school, or you're going to get drafted. And back then they had the lottery, and I was in my first year of college, and after a few months I just quit. I just told my father, I said, it's not for me. I'm just going to join the workforce. And shortly thereafter, I got a letter from the military board saying you need to come down for a physical. And I went to my father and I said, Dad, what is this? And he goes, oh, I enlisted you. And I said, you did what? I said, my number in the lottery was like 315. And I think back then they were pulling people up to like 150. I wasn't even relatively close, but he didn't know that at the time. My number hadn't come out yet. And he said, I just didn't want you to get drafted like your brother. I want you to enlist and make something of yourself. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Because I was hearing the stories from my brother from Vietnam and letters telling me stuff about, just how incredibly painful that whole war was and just how insane it was. And like I said, he came back really damaged. He was never the same. His best friend, he watched his best friend get his head blown off right next to him in a foxhole, and that's the kind of stuff it's hard to come back from, and he used to tell me stories about, one day, he was walking off in the bush and he had rolled up a fat joint and he was smoking it, just getting baked. And all of a sudden came face to face with a Kong, and he was also stoned, and they both looked at each other and screamed and ran the opposite way. I think they ran about 50 yards away from each other, stopped and looked back at each other. And they had that look of, and why are we here? We're here to kill each other. Like, you get that kind of sense and sensibility when you're in that point. And then at that moment going, and why am I here? And, I love the military. I respect them. I like going to parades and saluting them. I love everything about that, but we have been in some senseless wars. Let's face it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was so close; he could have just passed the joint, and then they could have brought them together. There we go, peace treaty, man. But nope. Yeah, it's the little man that usually pays for the big man's, wars.
Yeah.
But then, so your dad enlisted you. Then how did that end up going for you?
Well, I must say, as a kid, we all grew up with punks and bullies and wise guys. I was a bit of a wise guy, but I was never really getting in big trouble. I never stole cars. I wasn't a thief. I like getting loaded on the street corner with my buddies and the girls, but like normal stuff. I was really not a bad kid. So I wasn't one of these guys that had to go to the military to get straightened out. I was just going to get buffed up, get a regiment, get some fine lines in my life. But I knew through the process it would be good for me. I never felt like, why am I here? I was okay with it. And I'll never forget first day in basic training. I'm at Fort Dix in New Jersey, and it's like late November, just about the turn of the month going into December. And first day, the DI walks in, and he was this cracker from down south, this white guy with the hat, and he was all dressed sharp, had a stick in his hand, and he was like, attention! And everyone stands, and we stand in front of our bunk, and I'm like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And he walks in, he's looking around, and he had to know this. He walked right up to my locker with his stick and flipped the door open. It opens, and my hat's up above on the shelf, and he puts his stick under the hat and lifts it up, and what's there but a Three Musketeer? And he goes, oh, Babineau, so you think you can eat candy when no one else can? Well, hit the floor. Give me 60. So I hit the floor, and I'm petrified. I knock out 60. I jump up. He goes, I didn't hear you count them. Do it again. Now, I'm spent. Yeah. So I get on the floor, and I'm 1, 2, 3. I still can't hear you. 4, 5. And I'm yelling them out. And I get up to about 25, heading towards 30, and I'm exhausted. And he puts his foot in my back, and he goes, so see, Babineau, you're going to learn a lesson today. Because of your antics with your sweet tooth, we're all going to run an extra 5 miles at the end of the day. And he goes, all you guys can thank Babineau personally for that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm officially a target on my first day in basic training. And all I wanted to do was blend in, Yeah. But that night we ran 5 miles, and no one messed with me. I was expecting, the soap bars and in the pillowcase in the shower room, the 3 or 4 guys are going to grab me and do me over. None of that happened. But from that moment on, I just towed the line. I didn't mess around. I saw guys getting bounced out, guys getting picked on, the heavyset kids, obviously they tortured, Yeah. But on graduation day, I was so fond of my DI, my drill instructor. I really was, because I knew what he did for me. He made me fit. He gave me a new set of morals. Like I said, I was towing the line. I was being a worthy candidate for the armed forces, And from there, I got shipped to Fort Knox, Kentucky. And when I got sent down there, they said, by the way, your MO is you're going to be a tank mechanic. And I went, no, Sarge, no. You got to understand, growing up, I was hanging on the corner with the girls. The other grease monkeys had their heads under the hood of cars. I've never touched a wrench. We don't give a shit, Babineau. You're going to be a tank mechanic. And I'm like, what kind of career can I get out of that? They go, you can work for Greyhound and work on their diesel engines. I'm like, not on your life. I said, put me in the kitchen. I don't care. And he goes, no, shut up. You're a tank mechanic. So I go to Fort Knox, Kentucky. I don't know if you know anything about tanks, but when you get inside them, there's a faceplate that's about 4.5 feet wide and about 3 feet tall, and it's oval shaped, and there's 80 bolts around it. And these bolts are like 2 inches across. They're big. So you got to take a hydraulic drill and drill all those 80 bolts off just to get this way, way heavy faceplate off to get into the engine. And I'm like, this is insane. So anyways, I was there for a few months, and then they shipped me to Germany because my brother was in Vietnam, so I didn't have to go to NAM, and so they shipped me to Germany. So now I'm in Frankfurt, and all we did is like dress marches in the morning and, some basic drill stuff. But I mean, nothing really happened there, till I got back to the States, and my career in the services wrapped up shortly thereafter. I didn't want to stay in for extra time because, once again, I knew I was never going to be a mechanic. I was not going to work on diesel engines at Greyhound. I was a cool rocker kid. Like, I wanted to do something that was fun. So as soon as I got out, those few months in college, I went to Franklin Institute, and I was going for engineering and architecture because I love architecture. But it was boring to me, just drawing lines and measuring this and that. So, but I went to work for an engineering firm, and I worked there for a handful of months. And a friend of mine told me that there was a job available at this warehouse outside of Boston where it was a independent record company that had a warehouse where you'd go and start in the warehouse picking record orders. And that's where I started. I worked for music merchants in Woburn, Mass. And literally every day I'd come out in the warehouse and grab an order sheet and start pulling A's first, A&M, Cat Stevens, Carole King, Free, Peter Frampton, Supertramps, all of the popular bands on A&M. Then I'd get to B, Buddha, and you know what I mean, and on down the line. And I did that for a little over a year, and I got promoted to work in the One Stop, which was a better job where you just did the first top 100 selling albums to a handful of popular stores. It was more bulk shipping. And I did that for about a year and a half, and along came Clive Davis, and they were looking for a promotion man, and Arista Records hired me, and I became the first marketing director in Boston. Back then, it was 1973, and record companies didn't have local marketing reps. They just had local promotion reps. So Clive had this brilliant idea. If the local promo guys go on the radio, getting these songs on the radio, we need a guy to go into stores, or girl, go into the stores and make sure our product that's on the radio is there, and also maybe do some displays and give a couple of boxes for free to the store, so they spin them in the store to draw attention. It was it's real obvious now. But I was the first in the music business. I'll never forget it. I did it for a year, and after a year, we hired a full national staff of local marketing reps. And I think within a year or two, every label followed suit.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wanted to ask you then real quick, going back to before you got out, you said that your time in the military kind of ironed out the rough edges or whatever. What do you feel that is something that you'll always carry with you from just having that time of service?
Well, I think because of that, first of all, it made me really appreciate my body, because what you learn in there, I'll never forget the day we qualified. Oh, first of all, so the first week in basic training, we're standing out in line, in formation, and these trucks pull up. Now, I see platoons marching by with M1s, the big old wooden rifles. I'm like, oh, this is going to suck. And these trucks pull up, and they unload these crates, and they go, all right, grunts, get over there, open them up. And we crack open these crates, and they were the M16s. We were the first battalion to get to use M16s. And it was like Mattel toys. We're picking up these black plastic guns going, oh, yeah, this is going to be great. So we were the first platoon to qualify on the rifle range with M16s. And I'll never forget, on the day of qualification, we march out to the range. It's 35 below with wind chill. It had snowed about 1.5 feet of snow. And we get out to the field, and the picnic tables are just covered with over 1 foot of snow on them. And they go, wipe off the tables. We're going to break for lunch. So we wipe the tables off, and they serve us fried chicken, which you got to eat with your hands. It's 35 below out. And then they serve us ice cream for dessert. And I'm like, okay, Sarge, what part of this are you not trying to kill us? We're going to get frostbite in our hands because we got to take our gloves off to eat this freaking chicken. And then you serve us ice cream. And he goes, let me tell you, dummy, we're giving you the fried chicken to get grease in your belly to keep you warm. And we're giving you ice cream so it'll lower your temperature so you can adjust to the cold. And once again, what I learned, Bill, is they had a plan all along. And I, not that I was fighting it, but it didn't make sense to me. But my point is, it really gave me a sense of value of, first of all, my person, my body, and also how to treat people. Like in a case of an emergency, I'm the guy who's going to step up like you. I'm not going to be running out the back door passing kids. I'm going to be going, what can I do? Let's go, let's help. I'm that guy. And I love that. And yeah, I have fear, but man, when that plane's going down and you need someone to create order, I'm going to be standing up going, okay, everybody, and I learned that all from the military.
Yep. And, I always ask veterans on here, even though it's like, it wasn't part of your original plan to go serve, but like you said, you learn that, you get that sense of service and duty when you're in. But what would you say is one of your greatest hopes for our country that you were willing to, give your life for?
Well, it's hard to say. I didn't feel bad about not going to Vietnam because I knew it was a totally screwed war. I knew there was no victory at the end of it. I knew it was going to be a black smudge on America's history, But when 9/11 hit, when that second plane hit that building, I literally called the board and I said, would you take me back right now? And they said, sir, you're over 60, we'll keep you in mind. Thank you for the call, but we got plenty of young recruits if we need them, but I was ready to go right back in, send me where you got to send me. Cause I love this country. I truly love this country. It's such a great country. And, and I'm not going to get political, but there's so many things wrong with this country. And, in our lifetime, we're not going to see them fixed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Most likely. But it doesn't take away my love for the USA. I mean, I love the red, white, and blue. I love the stripes and stars. I love everything it stands for. Every sports event I go to, I'm proud to stand up and put my hand on my chest, saying the national allegiance or whatever's going on, someone's singing, our anthem. It's a beautiful thing, man. There's such, in a short period of time. I mean, this country's got some great history. We've seen a lot of presidents come and go. I remember being a kid watching TV when JFK got shot. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. Still, it was just tattooed on my brain, and I remember standing at the Roxy Theater watching this artist, Jack Green, signed to RCA, performing, and his hit song was called Murder. And he was halfway in the song and someone came on stage and stopped him, said something in his ear, and he goes, I'm sorry, we have to stop the show right now. We just got the word John Lennon was just killed. And that was a moment like JFK. I went in the bathroom and the grown men were crying. And I remember walking out onto Sunset Boulevard and all the clubs, the Rainbow, the Whiskey, the Roxy, all of them just stopped and everyone came out in the streets. And, it was that 9/11 moment, it was a JFK moment, it was a John Lennon moment. These are moments of history in our life that just put an indelible stain on us that we have to live with, and, we've heard the term, some are sicker than others. And, it's really a shame that, some guy decided to put a bomb in the heel of his shoe once. And now for the last, 8 years, we have to take our shoes off on any flight we go anywhere. And it's all that kind of stuff, but you got to do what you got to do to protect,
Yeah. Now, you mentioned about your brother too, that having to go to Vietnam and not being the same. And, it's like we got so many veterans that still struggle with mental health and PTSD. What do you feel that we could do to break that stigma of mental health and PTSD?
Well, I just think, the government better not abandon the VA, and they better stand behind these platforms of mental health for recovery, because my brother had PTSD right till the day he died. Like, it plagued him, I mean, it's so funny when I think of the veterans and when they were coming back from war and people turned their backs on them. It's just like, really? These are the people that were protecting you so you could stay home. Like, I don't know, man. To me, we have to be merciless with our care for veterans and do whatever we can for all of them and whatever scenario they're in. Any kind of health care and mental care, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're the guardians of our country, bro. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Without them,
sign that blank check,
Well, without them, we're a communist country, and we've got a dictator, and and the people are randomly being pulled off the street, put in jail. All that. I mean, that's all up for grabs, man. That's why it's so great that we've been just a wonderful, republic of, free entrepreneurship, and capitalists, man. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with making money as long as you're doing it legally,
Yeah, exactly. And then, going back to your music start, you mentioned, Clive Davis getting involved, in your life. What was your relationship end up being like with Clive Davis when he came into the picture?
I'm going to give you a great example. So he hired me in 73. I worked for him for a year. And at the end of 74, he moves me to Chicago to become a local promotion man. And while I was there in the first few months, I got promoted to regional rock promotion guy. So instead of just working locally in Chicago, where the furthest part away was driving up to Milwaukee, all of a sudden I have the whole Midwest. I got Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, Indianapolis. I have that whole Midwest circle, St. Louis, Kansas City, all of it. And it was awesome. I had so much fun doing it. But I worked for him till 78. And in 78, A&M Records came along and hired me when I was in Chicago. But before I go there, so I worked for Clive for like 4.5 years. That I started with him in 73. I left him in 78. Cut to, I'm at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I'm working for Geffen at the time. It's like 1989. And I'm on the way down to Elton John's cabana by the pool. And so and not the name drop, but this is what happened. Yeah. So I'm walking around the edge of the pool, walking over. I see Elton's in the corner with his whole posse. And as I'm walking along, there's Clive Davis in a cabana by himself reading a book. And I go, I don't want to bother him. So I walk by him and I stop and I went, no. And I turned back and I walked back over and I said, excuse me, Clive. And he looks up and I said, Clive, I'm Marko. I don't think you remember. And he goes, Marko Babineau? Of course I remember you. I remember your first newsletter you sent me. It was a little green 4-page fold out. I'm like, oh my God, this was from 1973. My first encounter with Clive, because I used to put together a little 4-page retail kind of like flyer that I would mail to the office and put out copies at stores. He remembered that. And I'm going, this guy is scary. What a memory. And I love Clive. He was a great man. Is a great man, We shouldn't talk past tense.
Yeah.
But I always respected him and his ears. And I've got so many stories from those days. I had so much fun working with like Commander Cody and some of the acts, the Bay City Rollers and the Outlaws and the Kinks and Patti Smith. They were good days. They were really good days. And my book eventually will come out because these stories have to be told.
Yeah, for sure. And you were talking about when you had the whole Midwest, and of course, me being here in Cleveland, I have to ask, you got any good Cleveland stories?
Oh my God, you kidding me? My first night in Cleveland, I was on the road. No, it wasn't my first night because I was with A&M at the time. I used to stay at Swingos all the time in Cleveland because it was the rock and roll hotel. And the cool thing about Swingos is every room has got a different motif. And I always used to get the jungle motif, which meant it had like jungle wallpaper with like leopards and tigers and stuff. It was weird. And the ceiling fan was always bent a little from people hanging off of it. I mean, it was really a rock and roll hotel. And I'll never forget being on the road. It must have been like 79. I was in there with Nazareth. And I check in at the front desk and I turn around and I get in the elevator to go up to my room. And I walk in the elevator, and standing in the elevator is Fee Waybill and a couple of members of the Tubes, which were bizarre enough looking alone. And on the other side of the elevator were 3 or 4 of the Washington Senators basketball team, which these guys were like 8 feet tall, like giants. And I'm like, this is cool. Basketball, rock and roll. First day in Cleveland, here we go. And of course, Kid Leo and John Gorman came over my room that night, and we had some libation, and we went out for drinks, came back, partied some more. But that night with Nazareth was crazy because it was, road crews always take off middle of the night after the show and go to the next city. The bands will stay over and the next morning leave. Well, this was the one night that the road crew got to stay over. So the road crew was throwing the party that night, and they kept me up all night. They would not allow me to go to bed. Literally will not allow me to go to bed. And a lot of stuff happened that night, which will be for another time, but good times.
Nice. And then, so then you went doing the marketing and stuff coming through Cleveland. You worked a lot with MMS, I'm assuming as well, right?
The Buzzard was my fave state. Now, you got to understand, growing up in Boston, I had WBCN, which, at the time, if you looked at the country way, way, way back, you had BCN in Boston, you had KSAN in San Francisco, you had KMET in LA, and I guess ABX in Detroit and MMS in Cleveland. That was kind of it, Bill. There was like 5 or 6 hip alternative rock radio stations that would play album sides, and segue music from song to song. I mean, how many times when you were young, you sit around just getting stoned with a buddy and you turn the radio on, or you'd start playing a record and your buddy would put a song on after it. And you put one on after it, you create a groove like, oh, I like that Hendrix song. I got a Stevie Miller you're going to love. And then, oh, check this Allman Brothers out. All that kind of groovy stuff. I mean, radio was so awesome back then. And WMMS was I think it's 101, was one of the first radio stations. The Buzzard was their logo. And I wish I still had a T-shirt, but I used to have MMS T-shirts, and such a great, oh boy, he's going to bust one out. I love this.
I'm not busting a T-shirt out, but.
Oh, well, there it is. Yep. That's it.
My girlfriend bought me this when we were out shopping in her town the other day at some like vintage store, so I got to find a room to hang it up down here somewhere.
But Kid Leo, he was the music director, and he did a evening shift. I think it was 6 to 10. But oh my God, he was legendary. He goes down with some of the biggest names in radio, and just Man, he did it for a long, long time. I mean, they were a great station.
Yeah, awesome. And then as time went on, then, you know, in your career, you know, you worked with so many like legendary bands. You've already named quite a few, but I remember like hearing in a previous interview you did that you were kind of like working with the Police as they were getting started.
Yeah, well, A&M, like I said, came along in 78 and hired me. And they kept me in Chicago for 78 and 79. And then in 80, they moved me to LA to work on the lot and run the whole promotion department. But in those 2 years, I was covering, they didn't hire me as a regional promotion guy. I was a national promotion guy. So here's the good news. The home office is in LA. The satellite office is New York, and here's Marko in Chicago with a black Amex card saying cover all our bands wherever they are in the country, and you just stay there, which I did. But I got to take Police on the first American tour. It was me and Kim Turner, their road manager, who drove the van, and the 3 guys. So there were 5 of us. I covered their first 13 or 15 American dates through the Midwest. And their set list was so short that for an encore number, they'd have to do their first song, hoping that a lot of people weren't in the club when they started their set. But that's how new they were. And to watch them, I mean, watch them go from Outlandish to Morris, that basically we broke Roxanne, which was not overnight. That actually took a good while, to, you know, Regatta de Blanc, which was Walking on the Moon. It was like a nice progression, to Zenyatta Mandata, which are actually numbers, I think was before that. But Zenyatta Mandata, by the time they had done their 4th album, they were playing stadiums, you know, and they were massive. And Sting, I give them credit, because here I was working with them back in 79. And about 3 years ago, Sting came out and did a benefit for 88.5, which is KCSN in Northridge, Cal Northridge, a college station, commercial free. And that's what we all listen to now. And for any of your listeners out there that get tired of commercial radio, put on 88.5. I have it on all my computers in my house. I have it in my cars. I mean, it's everywhere I go. And all I play is new music, and their gold library is like U2, REM, Pretenders, Talking Heads, nothing but Devo, nothing but the best, Blondie, you know, all the cool stuff with all the new. And that's where I find out about all my new music. But, you know, in my time working with Police, I also got to work with Joe Jackson. I broke him from his first album. You know, went out on the road and exposed him. I got to work with Styx through Pieces of 8 and all their big records, you know, and Supertramp, Breakfast in America. Though they were the nicest guys in the world too. But I mean, I really got to work in Nazareth and some of these other rock. Peter Frampton, I got to work with him very closely. Nicest man in the world. Still see him in LA every once in a while. Sweet, sweet guy. And, you know, here he is now winning Grammys for his solo guitar records, you know. I mean, what a great body of music. But, you know, all those days at A&M were really good. And the last act I broke was Bryan Adams, which I put a lot of pride into and was really happy. And Bryan was a dear friend. And it was great to watch him really happen. But in 1983, 1983, David Geffen came at me and really pushed hard to hire me. And I was at Geffen from 83 to 91. And, you know, I was there for Whitesnake and Tesla and Guns N' Roses, Rebreak, Aerosmith. And, you know, I grew up with Aerosmith. So what a joy to be able to sit down. Done with Mirrors was so apropos because that album was done with mirrors. It was never really that good or that real. I mean, the Lightning Strike, I think, was the only song that got played off that album. So it was kind of a throwaway, but then they came along with Permanent Vacation, and that's when they really locked in. And, Bruce Fairbairn, chipped in on that, and just their career just went crazy. But then along came Guns N' Roses, these young kind of strung out LA punk rock kids that put this rock band together. And, it's all history now, but we had no idea in the beginning what we were looking at.
Yeah.
Till they finished that first Appetite for Destruction album. And Mike Klink did a stellar job, because I had seen them at the Roxy when they did a showcase for the label. And I walked out of there going, I don't get it. I don't know if these guys really have it. It's really, I think the big song I remember was like bitch or fuck you, something just something really stupid, fuck off or something. I don't know. And I thought, wow, they're crude. Okay, well, they're wild, they're untamed. But when I heard Appetite for Destruction, I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be a masterpiece. This is a record we're going to look back 10, 20 years from now and go, one of the greatest rock albums of all time. And sure enough, you know.
I want to definitely come back to Guns N' Roses, because my love for that band. But before leaving A&M, I heard some stuff too about like the A&M lot. And was it A&M that had the studios there on the lot?
Yeah, A&M Studios were, when you pulled through the gates at the lot, there was a security guard there, and then you had multiple structures, and it's the old Charlie Chaplin lot. So there was a lot of history, a lot of Hollywood there. A&M never reconstructed any of the buildings. They kept it as it was. But when you pulled in on the left was A&R, and the second floor was artist development. And then across the parking lot, there was a 2-story building, and sales and marketing were downstairs. And the second floor was all promotion. And on the far end, across the parking lot, was Herb Alpert's office and Jerry Moss's office, and all of their legal and all of their kind of staff offices. And so you had these on each side, and right in the middle was this separate building, and that was A&M Studios. And this is a funny thing, Bill. I had worked there on the lot for about 8 or 10 months. And every night around 5 o'clock, I'd go across and go upstairs to artist development. And Martin Kirkup was running artist development. And that was one of the best jobs in the music biz, because you didn't have to go to radio promote them. You didn't have to go to retail. You just had to make sure the artist was happy and just do the right thing and give them the right exposure. And we used to go up there and have cocktails at 5:30 every night. And I'll never forget one night sitting up there, and there's a crowd outside the studio. And I said, what's going on down there? And he goes, oh, I think Clapton's there. I know Santana and Fleetwood Mac are in there recording. And I went, what? He goes, oh, yeah, there's huge bands every night of the week down there recording. And I was like, oh, my God. So that just kept me from going home so many nights, because we'd go upstairs and get licked up and get lit up and, burn a few. And we'd go down into the studios, and I'd be hanging out with these artists, because I work at A&M. I can go anywhere I want. Yeah. And I met so many artists that way. And it was such a treasure trove of talent that was going down behind those walls every night. And I had no idea. I mean, actually, I was at the lot when they did We Are the World. And I didn't even know. I wasn't there that night. I didn't even know about it till the next day, and I heard about it. I was like, why didn't someone tell us about it? And they went, I don't know if you know, but it was extremely hush-hush. They told each of the artists to be there at 11 p.m. and do not tell anyone, because they didn't want the press and paparazzi crowding the gate and ruining it, because it was all on the hush-hush. And it was that hush that I worked there, and I didn't even know it happened, which was pretty cool. I don't know if you've watched the documentary, but it's really good. I loved it.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Oh my God, you got to watch it because I just had no idea just how that whole thing happened. It was a fluke. It shouldn't have happened. Imagine getting 30, 35 of the biggest names in the music industry, all Grammy Award winners, and getting them all together in one room and saying, okay, we're going to record this song. These are your parts. I want you to practice them. And then the next few hours, we're going to put it all together. We're going to record this single. And what happens in the documentary really shows you how insanely difficult it was to organize.
I bet.
Oh, and at one point, I think Quincy said, this just isn't going to happen. Because it'd be like, okay, attention, everyone. And everyone's talking to each other, totally ignoring. Hey, everybody, attention. Nope, they're just talking because it's ego.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a documentary worth watching. It's really, really good.
That's funny. And then, and then you mentioned Fleetwood Mac, man. It's funny because my girlfriend's like, she's like 20 years younger than me. She's very much into the classics, and she's a huge Fleetwood Mac fan.
Yeah, my real estate business partner, I'll never forget one day he said to me, he goes, I love Fleetwood Mac. I got their first album, Rumors. And I was like, oh my God, you don't know anything. Let's go back to English Rose and then Play On and like the Peter Green days. And then the Danny Kerwin days through, Railroad Station Man. And then you had Bob Welsh, and all the changes that band went through before they got Buckingham Nicks. That was late in their career. Yeah. But they were the biggest days.
Yeah, for sure. And then now going back to, David Geffen coming in your life and then you getting involved with Geffen Records. Let's definitely talk more about that time because, as you know, I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan. I showed you the second tattoo I got when I was in the Navy was Guns N' Roses. Appetite came out while I'm in high school. I remember somebody like convincing our gym teacher to play it over the intercom in gym class while we're out there doing gym. And like he barely made it through the first couple of songs because, like you said, all the expletives and everything. He's like, oh, I got to turn this off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So my days at Geffen, it's funny because everyone goes right to Guns N' Roses. But, you got to understand when we signed Whitesnake, their last album before they got to Geffen was Love Ain't No Stranger. They had Cozy Powell on drums. I mean, it was a whole different lineup. It was a 4-piece band. And they were really good. And if you don't know that album, I highly suggest you listen to it. Because I think Slow and Easy and Slide It In and Love Ain't No Stranger were on that album. But when we finally did the Geffen album, that was the big gray marble cover with the emblem in the middle. We had all those hits, and all of a sudden Whitesnake became a household word, and name. I mean, they just became huge. I'll never forget, I think it was 88. The Texas Jam went down to Dallas, and on the bill opening was Poison, second band Tesla, which was ours, third band Whitesnake, ours, fourth band Aerosmith, headliner Boston. Wow. And by the time Aerosmith was done and Boston was taking the stage, the stadium was emptying. I mean, it was like the Geffen day. Because we had Tesla, Whitesnake, Aerosmith, all in a row. And it was the beef of the whole day, the whole festival. And man, it was, we were kings back then. We owned rock radio, I mean, it was kind of obnoxious because rolling those bands out, and Tesla was still one of the most underestimated great American rock blues-based bands. I always thought Levi should have done commercials with them because they were just young kids from Sacramento wearing 501 jeans and T-shirts and just rocking out. You can still pull up that first album, and some of them, I mean, those kids blazed. They were really, really good. But that being said, here we are with all these bands and Guns N' Roses. I mean, Aerosmith, after rolling out Permanent Vacation into Pump and, Get a Grip and all those records. And along comes Guns N' Roses, and we just annihilated radio one after another. And then Nirvana comes out. And it was like, not Geffen again. No, please give it to someone else. So, I mean, we didn't go away politely. We made our stamp on the music biz.
And I know like Brian Wheat from Tesla, he's still out there, putting together like little side projects and bands and doing his own thing in the business, man. Those guys are keeping it going, man.
Nicest guy in the band. I still stay in touch with Brian every so often. He was just, I mean, once again, they were homespun kids from Sacramento. They didn't know success. And think about it. They get pulled out to be the opening act on Def Leppard's first Theater in the Round tour, where they put the stage in the middle of the stadiums with the curtain around them. And Tesla would play, and then Def Leppard would come out, and the whole curtain would drop, and it was 360. They were the first to do that. Then Metallica and everyone else followed and started doing those 360 stages, in the middle of arenas. But what a great exposure for them. They did that whole American tour with Def Leppard, and that's really what broke them.
Nice. And then, going back, is Geffen's where you, that's where your career kind of wrapped up in the music world, correct?
Yeah. In 91, I left Geffen in the summer, and sometime around October, November, I started my own independent promotion company and a management wing where I had just a couple of small bands, one out of the Midwest, out of St. Louis, a band called Colony that K-Rock played and some stations supported, but we never broke them. And it's one of those records I can still pull out today, and I could hear it on the radio today. It was kind of timeless, but we didn't have much success with it. So my independent promotion company was massive, though. I mean, because you got to figure, here I was, promotion guy of the year after year, and I had all these big bands that I worked with various record companies. So, of course, every label wanted to hire me because I knew radio. They were all my best buddies because of all the great records I brought them. So you had to hire Marko on every project. So I did that for a handful of years and did real well. And it was the day when record stores started closing and labels were downsizing and the lawyers were taking over. I read the writing on the wall, and I knew music business was changing, and it was in the process of going away. And record companies are still out there, but they're shells. They're basically just, they're an emblem with a handful of people behind the door. It's not full staffed. It's just not what it was. And, back when I was in it, we would sign a band for a 3-album deal, and each album would get 2 or 3 shots at radio. And by the 3rd song, if radio hadn't caught on to it, we go, make another record. But they had 3 shots, like Aerosmith. I mean, Done with Mirrors failed. If the music business was different, we might have never heard Permanent Vacation or Pump or Get a Grip. I mean, it was because of record labels, the way they were set up to expose and nurture bands and help them grow with touring and radio play and sales, that they developed. And that's why today we see a lot of one-hit wonders. We see a lot of acts come out and they come and go, come and go, come and go. Now, meanwhile, the Billie Eilishes and there are plenty of big names out there from Taylor Swift on down that have made their mark, and Adele, all of them. There's still great talent out there. But like I said, listening to 88.5, I hear these bands that I've never, Wet Leg, I'd never heard of them before. They've had 3 huge songs. These are bands that you hear a song and you go, wow, where did this band come from? Next thing I know, they're playing the Forum, 19,000 seats. And I'm like, how does that happen? But I mean, I guess between TikTok and YouTube, it's making its inroads. I mean, bands today to get signed, you can have 3 million hits on Spotify and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. You, now looking back at your career in the music world, you said, eventually a book will come out, but, what is, is there a funny story that comes to mind that, you feel you can share that, won't get you in too much trouble?
I don't know. I have so many of them, but I have so many different stories.
How would you say, coming from, your time in the military then, and what like you said, ironing out all the rough edges and then going and living this life in the music industry. What was that?
Well, it was a total different thing because the gloves were off, anything goes. Like when I was at Arista way back, when we signed Patti Smith, we were there for her first album, and she came to Boston to play a gig on the first tour, and she did an in-store at Strawberries Records. And I remember going to the hotel to pick her and Lenny Kay up, and we sat downstairs for 20, 30, 40 minutes waiting. I finally went up and knocked on their hotel door and said, guys, we have an in-store. You got to come down now. We're already late. So they come out, hair is everywhere, barely buttoned upright, like really a mess. They had been up all night, just totally hammered. And they kind of just pour themselves into the limo, and we're on the way. And she's just like, I'm like, I don't even want to talk to her. Because Patti back then, she was wild, and I was just this young promo guy trying to be cordial, and I just shut the hell up and just like, hi, Lenny. And we got to Strawberries, and there's hundreds of kids. The store is packed. You can't fit another kid. There's at least 100 kids out in the street screaming. They had kind of roped off an area that Patti and Lenny could walk through. And they're walking in, and Patty's just like, get me in there. And we get in there, and there's a podium set up for them. And they kind of walk behind and say, come on up here, guys. And you're going to talk to the audience for a couple of minutes, and then you'll sign some autographs, and we'll get out of here. And I'll never forget, Patti got up on the podium, and she's looking around with this look on her face. And she reaches down between her legs and pulls out a bloody Kotex and goes, I'm on the rag, and throws it out in the crowd. And people are literally jumping up trying to catch it because it's a moment of rock and roll history, and I'm just like, oh my God. And the store manager's like, what the hell? And I said, it's rock and roll, buddy.
Catching the bouquet at the wedding or something. Everybody's diving for her bloody Kotex.
But Patti, she was actually turned out to be a real sweetheart. And boy, back then, her live shows, it was electric. She was really something,
Nice. And then I'd like to ask the story of how you got your nickname, the Shark.
That's really a story for another time.
Okay.
Don Henley gave me the name. We were out all night the first night I met him when he was recording Building the Perfect Beast, and we're just partying, having a good time. And at one point he just said, dude, you're tenacious. You won't stop. So I'm going to nickname you the Shark. And I'll never forget, like a couple weeks later, the Eagles were playing in LA, and I went to the Forum, and I went backstage, and the whole band was lined up, and they were all doing this. They're doing this, wah, 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 wah. And I'm like, oh God. They're going, the Shark is here. And it stuck. But I mean, working with Don was so much fun. I love that guy. I mean, being in the studio when they were cutting like Boys of Summer and Sunset Grill, watching that going down as they were mixing it. And, you know, Henley's a guy that I never forgot. And actually, I went to the Sphere 3 weeks ago to catch the Eagles' final night. And
I was going to ask you if you got that same greeting.
No, but you know, I did hang out with Joe and his wife for a little while right before they went on. And I kept saying, is Don going to come out? I just want to say hi. And they go, you know, you got to understand, they all have their own dressing rooms. They're in their own world till they hit the stage, you know. And I must tell you, for a guy who's seen everyone from the Peter Greens and Fleetwood Mac to Cream and Jimi Hendrix when Hendrix was opening for the Monkees, you know, Free, Jethro Tull's first American tour, all these bands, I've seen them all. And that night at the Sphere was the best concert I've ever experienced. And I know the Eagles just booked, I think, 4 nights back in September. They're going to go back and play 4 more nights there. And if any of the listeners on this call, it's worth spending the money. Go to Vegas, get a room for 1 night, go to that show, and you will experience something like you've never seen. And I'm not just saying that. It's an experience. It's not just a rock concert. And a lot of people think the Eagles, all the hits, yeah, big, you know, come on. It's not like they're out there ripping it up. But I'm telling you, it's a visual hallucination. It's crazy.
Nice. And then, you know, of course, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, how we met and started working our relationship and working together. You know, if you want to share a little bit about your story.
Yeah, well, I mean, back when I left Geffen in 91, you know, I was consuming a lot of alcohol and drugs, you know, to the point it affected me in a big way. And I needed to do something about it. And I got a call from a guy, a big manager in Boston with a band out of there. And he just said, you know, you can change your life. You need to get clean and sober. And he kind of pointed me in a direction. And I've been clean and sober since 91, you know, and it's just, you know, do I miss alcohol and drugs? Not really, because I did so much of it in the day, and I did it when it was fun. You know, I mean, the stuff we were doing back then in the late 70s and 80s and into the 90s, it's just not being done like that anymore. You know, it was a different time, and I got to live through it. And that's the way I look at it. I don't look at it like, oh, I pined for those days. I miss it. No, because they're not around anymore. So anyways, being clean and sober, I mean, the great thing is I have a 34-year-old daughter. She's never seen me loaded, you know, and I'm a show up dad. She loves me. I love her. You know, we have an incredible relationship. And this is part of my whole being sober life, that it just has made me a better person. And, you know, it's changed my morals. It's changed my moral compass, you know, the way I treat people. I always want to be of service, you know, in any walk of life, not just in the sober community, to everyone. You know, I mean, I'm the guy that puts my shopping cart back after I walk out of a store. You know, I don't just leave it next to the car and drive off. I want to, as we say, suit up and show up. I want to be responsible, and I enjoy it. It's almost like it's my badge now. You know, it's my badge of honor. It's just the way I live, you know, and I got to meet you through that.
Yeah. 91, huh? You started. I was just getting started. I was just graduating high school, man. And I was really getting going. But like you, man, it's like, you know, it just, you know, there's a couple like wake up calls, but you know, I'm one of those guys that had to keep digging deeper and finally hit that bottom, you know. But what was for you? What was your bottom?
My bottom was my secretary suing me for sexual harassment. That was a real eye opener, because you got to understand something. Through my whole career, I'd never lost a job, never got fired. I was always just up climbing that ladder of success. I was David Geffen's golden boy. He loved me. I mean, they had to let me go at Geffen because my secretary was, she sued me for harassment. And the absurd thing is, you know, I was a player, you know, I was out there doing this, doing that, having a good time. And the last thing I wanted to do is have sex with my secretary, and she sued me. But I'm not saying I didn't have a part in it. There was some you know, hanky-panky going on behind closed doors, and it cost me my job. But because of that, I found myself at home going, what the hell am I going to do now? You know, I've never been out of work, and I had this brilliant career that was shattered over something really shameful. And, you know, I was never a predator. You know, even when I was loaded, I wasn't. I was a player, and there was a lot of stuff going on back then. And, you know, David Geffen said to me the last day I was in his office, and he said, you know, you should go travel the world, because this is not going to be fun. This is going to get ugly. But I'll tell you something, man, I would fire 10 executives to keep you, but I can't. And I wish you all the luck in the world, and, you know, God bless them. But, you know, because of that, I really grew up. And I realized how much I have to be responsible. And you know, just being sober did that for me, because all of a sudden I had to be this shiny example, which wasn't a front. It was me. It was who I was all along, without drugs and alcohol, you know, because that's the only thing that got in my way. So it was just time to belly up to the bar and get real, time to grow up, you know?
Yeah. And that's part of our journey, is we're still learning, you know, to try and grow up. You know, I look, for me too, it's just like, you know, life happens. And that's why I'm so grateful to have you as an ear to lean on, because, like, you know, I got 16 years now, but I'm still, you know, still having to learn how to work with others. You know, it's like I had having daughters as well, is it's like, you know, there's the things we do that brings us together, and then there's things we do that separate us. And I know for me too, it's like one of the struggles was, you know, alcohol was but a symptom for some other stuff. You know, my time of service, you know, some of the things that I picked up and carried, and working through that depression and that anxiety and all that, I have to feel the things without numbing out. What has been some of the things that has helped you on your journey, when all of a sudden, you know, the alcohol and drugs were taken away and you had to feel the feelings?
Well, I mean, you know, at first it was rough, like anything. It takes getting used to not having a crutch, you know, that I was using all the time. But I was always a pleasure seeker. I mean, I'm not the depressive type. I didn't sit alone and get hammered because I was sad or depressed. I was always out picking up the bar tabs and celebrate. I was a celebratory drinker, to the point it just got the best of me, you know? So when I got clean and sober, looking at my life was like, wow, I can live without that substitute, that thing in my life that made me fun. I can be fun without it.
Yeah.
You know, and I've learned that to be true, and I'm a better man because of it, you know, and I really care for people. You know, I expressed earlier in this interview my love for the country, and I feel that way about people too. And it's really a shame this country's gotten so fear-based that, you know, I see people all the time, and I'm constantly trying to be nice. And like that Progressive commercial where you see the older people talking to strangers, and the guy goes, all right, stop that. I'm that guy now. I am that guy now. I'm the guy that walks up and I go, hey, I had breakfast this morning, and the table next to me was these three older gentlemen with a younger woman, and I couldn't just leave it alone. I couldn't just walk out. I had to go up and go, excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but I get a sense you guys, are you in the film business? You look like you're all retired, either directors or line producers or maybe grips or cameramen. You kind of look like industry guys. And they were like, no, we're here on vacation. He's from Akron. He's from Indianapolis. I'm from Kansas City. And I'm like, okay, well, sorry. Have a nice day. You know, instead, Marko, just move on.
and then, now currently, you've been doing real estate for a while. When did the transition come, or, what kind of led you into that field?
All right, I'm going to drop 2 names, and I'm going to clarify that right now because I'm not a name dropper, but it fits the story. So here I am meeting Elton John at the Ivy for lunch, and it was probably 99, somewhere around there. And I walk in, I sit down, and we're talking. He's telling me about his flat in Paris, how he's designing it this way. And I start giving him some ideas on, furnishings and style and this and that. And he goes, you should get into real estate. You seem to have a good eye for that and a good sensibility. Cut to a week later, I'm flying up to San Francisco to hire a local rep. And when I'm up there, I bump into Neil Young. His kid was sitting next to me on the plane, and there's this little boy in tie-dye, head to toe, with a toy plane. And I could tell he was alone because when we landed, I was sitting next to him, first row in first class, and they said, we need to let the little boy off first. His father's here to pick him up. I went, oh, sure. So he's standing in front of me, and I'm right behind him. The door opens, and there's Neil, head to toe, tie-dye. And he goes, hey, and his son runs into his arms, and he goes, Marko, what are you doing here? I said, I'm up here looking to hire someone. He goes, oh, great to see you, man. And we're talking, walking down the runway, and he goes, man, I got to tell you, I loved everything you did for me on the label. And matter of fact, why don't you come out to the ranch and have lunch with me and the wife? So I said, sure. So I went out and had lunch with him, and we're eating in this dining room, and he's got a geodesic dome in the ceiling of his dining room. And I said, I had dinner at Cher's a couple of months ago, and in her dining room, she hits a button and the whole ceiling rolls back and it's open sky. I said, you should electrify this dome so it rolls back. And he goes, that's brilliant. And he goes, you know what? You need to get into real estate. Now, I got to tell you, at the time, I was probably 7 years clean and sober, and I'm 7, 8 years, somewhere around there. But I'm hearing what it is the universe talks to you. And if you keep your radar open, you listen to what people are saying, the universe will tell you. So I had 2 very influential people in my life, both go real estate. So I went out in 2001 and got my license and wrapped up my music career in that year. And come 2002, beginning of the year, I activated my license, and I've been doing real estate ever since. And I've got a great career, done very well, doing real well right now, and God bless. And a lot of that I got to put on just being clean and sober, being alert and paying attention and knowing what to say and what not to say, and real estate's been great, but I'm not done yet. I still got something else in me career-wise,
Oh yeah. And I definitely want to transition over to that, because obviously, music's been such a big part of you. As you say, you're still actively playing out as well. And now you just, got involved with guitars, with Nefarious Guitars. Let's talk about the launch of that and how that came together.
Yeah, Nefarious Guitars. So here I am, about a year and a half ago. I'm selling a house in Sherman Oaks to a singer-songwriter. We're walking through the house, first showing. I think the house is vacant. I go through the combo box, get in the house. We're looking. He's going, God, this house is beautiful. Look at the molding and this and that, and the wood floors. And leaning against the wall is a raw wood guitar body with this burn in it that looks like lightning hit it. like just veins of burns that look like tree branches, really cool looking. So I pick it up and I say to my client, Charles, what do you think of this? He goes, wow, that's rad. I'd love to have a guitar like that. And all of a sudden out of the back of the house comes this guy with his hair disheveled in a robe, and he comes out. I go, oh my God, I'm a realtor. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to disturb you. And he goes, no, I'm the owner. I was expecting you guys. And he introduces himself, and Frank, I'm Marko. And I said, Frank, what's going on with this body? He goes, oh, I burn furniture. I do like end tables and bureaus. I said, how about guitars? And he goes, I never thought of that. So cut to 2 or 3 months later, we partner up. We've been partners for a year. We had a booth in January at NAMM, exposed Nefarious Guitars to the world. And for example, Severo, who's a dear friend of mine, he's the bass player in the Smithereens, came by and he picked up one of our guitars or one of the basses, and he's playing it and he's going, God, this thing's like butter. It's beautiful. He says, but I got to tell you something, Marko. I've walked by probably 200 guitar booths, and I've seen some of the most beautiful guitars, well, relict or antique or just brand new shiny, but no one here has anything like you, which is our Nefarious Guitars with this burn in the body. And what we do, we burn the bodies with electricity. And every time we burn them, everything is an original. We can't just duplicate what we just did. We have a sense of where the electricity is going to go, because we treat it with a liquid first and put cables on each end, and it burns towards each other. But sometimes it'll just go off on the grain and it's got a mind of its own, which is the beauty of it. And it doesn't affect the tonality of the guitar at all. So, you know, we're just starting to get real exposure. We're taking meetings with Guitar Center right now, and Fender and Gibson. And what we've done is we've designed also guitar pick guards, you know, the piece that's mounted in the center of the guitar. So even if you didn't buy a guitar with the full burn on the body, you could buy just one of our guitar pick guards and, you know, have a nice, simple, clean guitar body with this beautiful burn work on the center of it in the piece. So you can either spend a lot of money and buy a very expensive Nefarious guitar, or you can just spend, you know, $150 and get a really beautiful piece of art on the guitar pick guard, you know. And just so you know, what I'm wearing is Nefarious Guitars. We call this guy Zeke. You know? And so many people go, oh my God, that creature looks so familiar. And if you remember there's an old, I think, German fable at Christmas time, Krampus.
Krampus, yeah.
And what he does is Krampus would come to houses and steal all the gifts and the toys, and eventually started stealing the children. And it was a scary story. That was a scary Christmas story. Anyways, so we found this logo and we thought, yeah, it's kind of nefarious. It's kind of like outrageous and bold and creepy and scary and, you know, nefarious.
So that inspired the name then.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we also put the electricity throughout Zeke's body, because that's what we do. We're burning guitars with electricity. And it's funny because I had burnt my first few guitars and was really proud of it. First guitar I burnt, I sold to the Sheik of Iraq for about $8,000. I mean, these guitars are not cheap. You know, our guitars right now range anywhere from $45,000 to $9,000. But, you know, we partnered up with this company, Black Volt Amplification, and Gio Laurier is the owner and builder. And all of his work, his main part of his company is these handmade wooden amplifiers. Now, you see amps on stage all the time. They all have that black vinyl on them. These are natural wood, and instead of silver or black speaker cloth, he has like Navajo blankets. So they're really Southwestern, kitschy, cool, but he hand solders all tube amps. Beautiful work, beautiful work. Well, his guitars are the same way. His Black Volt guitars, he uses nothing but reclaimed wood. Some of it's up to 100 years old, where he gets to buy out, areas where he gets this real collectible wood, beautiful wood. So our guitars are made from all the best parts. They're not, just thrown together. And that's why they're so pricey. So that's what's kicked us off over the last year. But we're getting to a point now where we're starting to look for space. We're going to start building our own guitars. And we have a couple things in negotiation right now with a couple of major companies that it's all on. I'd love to talk about them, but none of it is finalized yet. But I mean, we're talking big clothing companies. We're talking major artists through the work through our last 100 years to replicate some of their artwork on our guitars. I mean, we've got a lot of processing going on. And one thing we've done, we also have a henna artist that can henna around the burns, which is an incredible, beautiful look. And we also have a painter who paints cherry blossoms on the end of the burns, so they almost look like trees, And so we're going in a million directions. And we actually wrapped a guitar last year in denim with rock and roll patches all over it. And we put that in Guitar Center and did it for charity to raise money for kids who can't afford instruments. And they put it right up in the glass next to B.B. King's Lucille. I was real proud of that, So we're literally still just getting our name out there. So it's a slow rollout, which I'm fine with because my day job's paying the bills. But Nefarious is about to make a lot of noise, and I think everyone's going to hear about us real soon, God willing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And that's funny. I didn't know how you and Frank met. So that's funny in itself, how you guys connected. But I like what you were saying too, how when you create with the electricity, none of them look the same. Everything is uniquely made. Wherever the trail goes, the art is unique. Kind of reminds me of our one brother Tommy's paintings with his wheelchair and everything too. But if you buy a Nefarious guitar, you can rest assured pretty much that no one's going to have the same design.
It's true. And I think in the world of guitars, I mean, relicking has been happening for the last 20 years. It's all pretty much the same, beat a guitar body with a chain or just sand out some rough spots, put a couple of dings in the body. Okay, it's antiqued, it's relicked, cool. Well, once again, I think we bring something brand new, and just the fact that it doesn't affect the tonality is really cool. But like I said, artistically, we're venturing off in a couple of different directions. And it's fun. I'm having a blast.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. I love, hearing about what's next and seeing some of the posts and some of the people that you potentially could be working with and already are. So I'm definitely excited for you. I know, we've gone a little over our time. So before we get ready and wrap up, I wanted to, first of all, for people that want to, check more out about Nefarious, where would you send them?
Go to nefariousguitars.com.
Awesome.
That's simple. Yep.
And then I want to ask you a couple of questions that I normally ask my guests that I have on.
By the way, we are redesigning our front page on our website. So if it looks a little wonky, don't worry about it. It's under construction and it's being corrected as we speak.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what me and you had talked about, I think a week ago too, is like my website's going through the rebuild, and that's why I wanted to try and include, working with Nefarious and helping promote you guys out there as well. So, so we talked a lot about music, and I know this is going to be tough as a musician like yourself, but today, there's been so many bands that have inspired you along the way, but today, who would you say are your top 3 musical artists?
Oh boy. Lola Young has got a song out right now called Messy, and I love it. I love her groove. I love her lyrics. I like where she's coming from. She has really impressed me. Oh boy, I really. I mean, there's so many cool bands out there. The Black Pumas, I've really liked their music. Jack White's new album. There's some songs on it that are the best things he's ever done. I don't know, man. It's like the world is my oyster. There's a ton. Wet Leg, check out Wet Leg. They're like a female Devo. They're really unique. I mean, it's just, there's so much out there. Chinese Breakfast Club. I love them. Oh boy. You know,
Yeah, that's fine.
You hit me on that one. I'd have to really think about it because there's a ton. If people say there's no good new music, you got to put 88.5 on .com and you will change your mind because there's a ton out there. And you know what? I got to go.
Gotta run?
Yeah, I got to run.
Marko, I thank you so much for your time, man. And I thank you for your all you're doing for me personally outside of here and this being on this journey with your brother. I love you, man. Can I get you to do one last thing for me before you take off?
Sure.
You mind cutting a promo ID for the show? Just introduce yourself and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Can you give me 1 minute?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Marko Babineau, and I represent Nefarious Guitars. And if you want to visit our beautiful, unique guitars, it's nefariousguitars.com. And I'm today on Boondoggle Podcast and having a blast. It's the place to be. And thank you so much, Bill Bailey. You're a rock star. Peace.
Thanks a lot, Marko. Appreciate it, brother. Love you, man. And I know you're going to kill it tonight.
You know what?
Big changes are coming to the Boondoggle in 2025. New year, new logo.